Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Alexis Welch. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's start off. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So, I am a special education teacher. I teach in a self contained setting. I'm going into this is year 13 for me. I teach kiddos who have moderate to profound intellectual disabilities and autism. That's kind of my specialty. And right now, I teach high school kids with severe to profound autism. Love it. Couldn't imagine teaching anything else. And outside of the classroom, I'm a master IEP coach. So I help parents whose kids are not really being included, and other teachers and admin as well, create inclusive opportunities for those populations. I'm really involved in the disability community, and when I'm not doing any of that stuff, I'm a huge football fan, tennis fan. I love going to concerts, reading, and sleeping when I can.
There you go. What concerts have you been to?
The last concert that I went to, who did I? It wasn't Adele. It was that is such a shame. It may have been Maverick City and Kirk Franklin. I think was the last concert
Okay.
that I went to. They're one of my favorite like Christian groups.
Sure.
So they were here in Atlanta, and I got to go see them. But Chris Stapleton got canceled. I'm bummed about that, but
Ooh,
I listened to a little bit of everything.
yeah. That's awesome. You've seen Adele?
I have. I had to go to Nashville to see Adele because
Okay.
he was here 3 nights in Atlanta, and each of those nights sold out. So
Okay.
I just turned it into a road trip with some
There you go.
friends. Good times.
Yeah, we go to a lot of concerts too. So let's see, probably 2 years ago, went down to where we go? Charlotte to see Garth Brooks.
Okay.
We went to Nashville to see the Eagles. I've seen the Eagles 4 or 5 times. So we went
Oh,
down
I bet
there.
that's a good one.
Yeah, so we've been to a lot of them. The last concert we've been to was Jelly Roll at the Iowa State Fair.
Oh, fun, fun.
Yeah, we've seen him twice. He puts on a good show.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to him, but never seen him. Never been to a concert.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when you applied to be on the podcast, you submitted your definition of inclusion. I'll read it. So you submitted every person being able to participate in all activities in all settings, regardless of ability.
Mhm.
Would you like to say anything more about it or expand on it?
Yeah, I think, and I don't even think in terms of what we do, we're talking about ability, but I think regardless of any other factor, your gender, your sexual orientation,
Right.
your religious affiliation, just basically being able to bring people together, no matter what. I think, where there's a will, there's always a way to make inclusion happen.
That's awesome. Um, has that always been your definition, or has it kind of changed over time?
I think it's kind of changed over time. Seems like I say every seems like every 5 to 10 years or so in the disability community, there's like a new buzzword.
Right.
I
Yeah.
like to say, and starting out my definition of inclusion, like when I was in college, I strictly thought of inclusion in terms of special education, strictly a kid pushing into a gen ed class. I had a very narrow definition of what inclusion was. But as time has gone by, it's evolved for me to really that is any aspect of, of your life, going to church, going to the grocery store, do you have, access, even physical access to get into places.
Right.
So yes, it's evolved over time to it's kind of gotten bigger and bigger.
Sure. How did you get into special education?
Well, so my family moved to the area where I live now when I was in middle school, and around that the same time, my cousin had a baby who had CP, and that was when I really was like, oh man, everybody would be nervous to watch her, to babysit her, because she also, had some medical conditions and things that came along with that. And being around her made me comfortable. So when I started at this new middle school, at my new middle school, we had something called Partners Club, which is basically like a buddy club that paired kids with disabilities with kids without disabilities.
Yep.
And I love that. I love creating things for the kids. I love being their buddy. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do with my life. And so as a seventh grader, I decided like, hey, I want to be a special ed teacher, and I've never looked back.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, my journey is growing up, I don't remember anybody having a disability, us ever talking about it, seeing anybody in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember special education being talked about at school or anything. So when my daughter was born, it was all, I mean, it was all new to me. And what happened for us was, since I didn't know anything, I went along with what the school said. So she qualifies under, in Minnesota, severely multiply impaired, I think is the classification. So
Mm-hmm.
multiple ways she qualifies.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was sent across town to the special education, room down the hall with a couple sets of doors. I mean, that was actually true. It was down the hall with a couple sets of doors.
Mm-hmm.
Found out about inclusion, so started, trying to get her back in. So, do you have any tips for families like me where you find yourself maybe in a spot where you want your child more included than they are, and the school's kind of pushing back? Do you have any tips for families in that situation?
Yeah, I think the first thing, as parents, I don't have children. I tell people my students are my children, but
Yeah,
from working with so many families and stuff, the number one thing I hear from parents is raising a child that has more severe disabilities can be very isolating.
right,
And so I would first say to parents, join some local support groups. Maybe get to know the other parents in your child's class, and you all kind of brainstorm and work together because you're coming from different experiences,
for
and
sure.
bounce some ideas off of each other. And then I think um, when it's one thing to just say to the teacher or to the admin, hey, I want my kid included, and sometimes they push back for various reasons. But I think when you go in and, hey, can we look at including them in this way and that way, when you have a plan,
Right,
I feel like they're more like, hey, Aaron's serious about this, let's look at
right,
this, let's see how we can make this happen, as opposed to just I want them included dot dot dot.
right,
I think that opens, that makes people more open to the conversation. And I think sometimes too, it's not so much that the school doesn't um, want to include the students. Sometimes they just really don't know how, especially if you're at a school like I've been at a school before, where my class was the only self-contained class. It was the first year that class had been at the school, and the administration just had no idea what to do with us,
sure.
in air quotes. So that was pretty much left up to me, to say, hey, these are the things that my kids can do, this is how we can include them. So I think having a plan or having some ideas is always a good thing.
That's great. What do you think about a lot of the stuff I come across too is like parents building relationships with the team. How do you feel about the importance of parents building relationships with members of the IEP team?
I think it's super, super, super duper important, because at the end of the day, we can have all the experience in the world, we can have all the degrees in the world, but you know, Aaron, nobody knows your daughter better than you. You know, we, as teachers, we're only getting a snippet, and we just see what they can do at school, unless, of course, if you're supporting them in different ways outside of school, attending events and things. But I think that's so important. And I think it gives the team ideas too, because I say to my parents all the time, hey, what? Tell me about what a day looks like for them at home. Tell me what types
Hmm.
of things they do at school. Let's see if we can incorporate that. Hey, here's what I do at school. Try this at home and see if that works. And it
Yeah.
really helps everybody, for the betterment of the child. Because at the end of the day, we're there to support that child. So it's so important, because parents can tell us things that we may not pick up on,
Right.
that we may not know because we never get to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100% as a parent. Especially if your child is means going to school, if they, qualify for therapies outside of school, PTOT. Now you got all these appointments, just all you're going all the time. You're tired and busy, and then get a call from school, something's not working right, and you're like, crap. Now I got to deal with that. So it's
Hmm.
it's for as a parent having gone through it, she's going to age out of the school stuff actually less than a month now. So just
Oh, wow.
having gone through all that, it's my daughter. It's emotional. Just trying to sometimes leave the emotions out of the room or the conversation. You try to, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But that's
Right.
you need to work with teachers. I feel like also I assume they know everything about everything, including inclusion, and that's I from my experience that's not true. Nobody
Hmm.
knows everything, so just
Right.
giving them the benefit of the doubt too helps, and just take a deep breath. Maybe once you hear something and you're amped up is not the correct time to email or make a call.
For
Maybe
sure.
go for a walk and think through, and then contact them. So yeah, it's great.
For sure.
Um,
And I
Go
really
ahead.
think too, especially for, like most of my students are non-speaking, so they
Mm-hmm.
use AAC devices,
Sure.
and sign language mainly to
Yep.
communicate. And so, I think it's especially important when you have a child who doesn't speak or is not always able to come home and say, "Hey,
Right.
mom, dad, this is how my
Yep.
day went." You may not check in with each other. The team may not check in every day, but at
Right.
least every week, something to know, when that child, if they have communication difficulties,
For
being
sure.
able to relay things, because we really have to rely on each other when the child can't convey that information.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, my daughter is somewhat nonverbal, so if I mean I can understand her, but you be not knowing her, it's going to be harder to kind of figure it out.
Hmm.
We tried AAC devices when she was younger. She just didn't want to use them. She wanted to just use her voice. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, so I kind of what you're saying makes sense to me. I mean, I can ask her questions, but not she's not going into great details. So that definitely is important to establish some kind of a communication between parents and the team. Yeah,
Right.
like you said, if not each day, if maybe once a week or something.
Hmm.
Also, she has epilepsy, so keeping track of seizure activity or all that stuff is we had to have communication about where all the did she take her meds like she's supposed to? Did she have any that kind of monitoring? So then when she comes home, we kind of know if something happened during the day to watch out for it. So yeah,
Right.
communication is definitely important.
Communication is key.
And the other thing is too, a tip I have for parents is, I mean, what I have for my definition of inclusion might not be the same as each person on the team. So just making sure, like, this is when I say inclusion, this is what I mean.
Hmm.
So get it out there so they know what I mean, and then figuring out what theirs is, because that's another thing we kind of came across is our definition of inclusion was like full inclusion, and for this special ed director, that wasn't like what she thought of as inclusion. So just
Hmm.
that disconnect about if the school thinks inclusion is just having my daughter eat lunch with general ed peers, and that's just barely a start for what I want. It's you need to figure out where the disconnect is so you can actually work to see how you can work together. So
I love that, Aaron. That's really such a good point. I don't think I've I don't think I've ever thought about that. Yeah, that even parents have different definitions, because
yeah,
you're not coming from the academic standpoint. You're coming from the
for sure.
parental standpoint, is in, hey, this is what I want my daughter's day to look like.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, and another thing so I just went through a training for charting the life course, more like person-centered stuff, and a lot of that is talking about, what kind of a life does your child want, and then what kind of a life as a family, do you want for your child? And, having parents focus on, I mean, the school is there and it's set up in a certain way, but maybe that's not the best, the traditional school model going to college is not what my child wants or what the family is worried about or wants for their child. So if that isn't what you want, as a family, come up with lay out what your goals are for your child or what their
Mhm.
goals are, what they want their ideal life to look like, and then go to the IEP team with that, and how can we set up the IEP in school to get those things accomplished.
Mhm.
Like you said, I know I'm around my child the most, and if you have a vision for your child that's different from what the school is telling you, I mean, you need to have a plan and voice your opinion. I think.
For sure, for sure. I think that's so important because the whole thing with special education is we have to remember that I is for
Mm-hmm.
individualized. So we shouldn't be trying to fit everybody into this,
Yep.
into this box. And that's why we have a spectrum and a continuum. Everyone's outcome is going to be different. And I think we have to be realistic too. We don't need to be trying to make child A do what child B is doing.
Yep.
Different kids. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think also sometimes that having a child with an IP, it kind of maybe it gives you more opportunities because if you don't have the IP, it seems like this. I mean, you have these classes, you can go to those classes, but with the IP, if you're able to be more creative, think out of the box, I feel like you can do some things maybe that traditional students aren't able to do. You can have stuff that actually is more tailored, to their
Mm-hmm.
needs besides just, hey, here's the science class, the only choice you have, this is what it's going to look like, go to it. I mean, if you're on
Right.
an ip, if the team's able to work together collaboratively and keep figure stuff out, you can do some different things. So
Mm-hmm.
um, try to want to look at it that way also.
Yes. Yeah. Their own roadmap.
Yes, for sure. um have you ever had any do you have do you have any more suggestions for like parents, about when, let's say, I mean, I'm butting heads with, like the case manager. I mean, how do
Mm-hmm.
you have any tips for parents on how to navigate that situation?
Yeah, I think um, it, when you first meet your child's teacher, I think, and I see it both sides, from working with parents and from being a teacher. I think too, both parties have to be mindful of first impressions. If you come out the gate and you're like a bull in a china shop, and hey, this is what I want. My kid has this, and my kid, has that. It makes people put their guard up. I think you I always say try to see the best in everybody, and try to have an open mind. And teachers try to understand that these parents, they just want the best for their kids. They're probably stressed. A lot of them, they're probably scared, especially if they have a um, newly their child's been newly diagnosed, or they just got their IEP, or they're younger. They're learning. And so for school personnel not to be so robotic, because we do this all the time. For parents, I say don't give up, but have those suggestions, and then sometimes explain. I know this may seem a little bit out of the box, or this may seem a little bit off, but this is why I want my child to do XYZ, and this is where we're trying to get to. And just with both parties too, I think you have to have an open mind, because at the end of the day, you probably are trying to get to the same place.
Right.
You just may have two different ways of going
Yeah.
about it. So be prepared to to compromise, not giving everything up and not doing only what the school wants to do, but be prepared to compromise a little
Yeah.
bit, and to maybe take you may have to take a different road than what you initially thought. And have, I think my number one thing is just have an open mind.
Right.
Have an open mind, because you probably are trying to get to the same place, but maybe take a little bit of their ideas, they take a little bit of yours, and you can really tailor a situation that really is customized to the student and for their benefit. So
For sure.
don't go into it with the my way or the highway type of attitude, because that doesn't make anyone want to listen to you.
Right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, sometimes it's just as a parent having gone through it, like I talked about before, when you're already fried, and it's just like this is what I want. I don't want to hear anything else. Let's just do it. But yeah, it's not going to work more than likely. So yeah, you have to go in. Like I try to list everything out that you want, and then prioritize also. Because if you have a list
Hmm.
of 15 things that you want, I mean that might not all work. So what are the things you're most important to you at that time, and prioritize. And yeah, for sure, because yeah, they don't know everything that I know. I don't know everything that you
Hmm.
know, so you need to have those conversations and be willing to compromise, for sure. That's
Yeah,
great.
and be patient. Be patient, because implementing new things, takes time. And I think also, it, we really have to think about what that looks like depending on the disability that the child has. If we have a child that has some behavioral challenges, implementation for that child may take a little bit longer than a child with a learning disability, or a child
Sure.
with
Yep.
a speech impairment. So I think that's another thing to consider too.
Right. Absolutely. So I've given two TEDx talks. My most recent one, I talked a little bit about using empathy to be more inclusive. How do you think we can use empathy to be more inclusive?
Okay, so yeah, I think empathy. I think we need to empathize and give each other a little bit of grace. All of us. I think the world can use more empathy right now.
For sure.
To be honest, I think it just makes things better for everybody, and I think it helps us keep our stress down. And just thinking about what others could be going through, or why they do the things they do, it really gives you a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Just the golden rule I have tattooed on myself. Also, love thy neighbor. I just feel like
Oh,
that if we loved our neighbors like Jesus is talking about in the Bible, we would have way less problems than we do right
yeah,
now. Just
for sure.
treating others how you want to be treated. So that's great.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I also went through the Master IP coaching stuff like you did. So help advocate for children in special education. When do you think is the right time for parents to bring in an advocate? Is there a wrong time or?
Um, I don't know that there's a wrong time. I think what happens is, a lot of times, though, parents don't bring in advocates until things become contentious.
Right.
And then I feel like that causes the school team to build up even more of a
Yep.
wall. And then they're like, okay, well, we got our lawyer, and we got,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I think the term advocate tends to have more of a negative connotation. In special education, we think contentious. They're going to lawyer up.
Yeah.
They're going to make us
Yep.
do this. But if you, from the very beginning, when your child gets their teacher, and you say, well, listen, I'm not the best at making these decisions. I just want to let you know that we do have, an advocate, and they're here to help me understand what things could look like for my child, or my rights, and
For
also
sure.
to help
Yep.
you. Let the team know that there's not it's not because they're doing anything wrong,
Right.
necessarily. However, I would say that if things have been going well, and then it seems like you just keep hitting a brick wall, and there is no, again, compromise, or the school system's not budging, then it may be time. So I see it from both ways. I don't think it's ever too early to have an advocate as a parent, if you feel like you need one, because that advocate's there to help both you and the child.
Yeah.
And hopefully, like what we do, we don't necessarily call ourselves advocates, but to help the
Yep.
team. But if things are getting contentious, for sure, I don't think it would hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it seems like a lot of times when I get calls from parents, it's yeah, we're already down the road, something's not right. So you're to that, like you said, contentious point. And I agree with you that if you bring like a advocate coach on earlier on and just have them there. For me, When my daughter had IEP meetings, it wasn't uncommon if there was like 10 people at least there. So just a lot of people. And as a parent, and besides us, it was all on the school side. So
Hmm.
as a parent coming into that, situation, there's a power imbalance in my mind, not like on purpose. I don't think it just happens with that many people on that side of the table. So just having somebody there, like I said before, it's some of it's emotional, a lot of it's negative talking about your child. So just having somebody there that they can take notes, they can keep the list of stuff that you want to work on to
Hmm.
keep you on track, make sure you covered everything. I kind of feel like you should always have an advocate with you, but like you
Yeah.
said, there is that connotation of, hey, they have somebody here now, we gotta mind our p's and q's and act differently maybe and that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
it's we need to work on shifting that narrative as well. But if
For sure.
parents, I always tell you to trust your gut. Like if you want somebody there, you can have anybody
Hmm.
there you want to. So by all means, invite somebody there, even if it's not an advocate. If you have your sister or mom come with you, just take notes, see what's going on. I mean, that also
Yeah,
helps. So
definitely. Another perspective never hurts. If
yeah,
my niece has autism, she's 6, and I go to all of her IEP meetings because sometimes one family member may think of something that the other
yep,
family
for
member
sure,
doesn't. So like you said, it's not necessarily always about an advocate in terms of special education, but also somebody to advocate for you and help
yep,
you. And I can only imagine what that feels like. You walk into a room
for
as a
sure,
parent and you see all of these people, and you're like, "Whoa, it's all of them," and then it's me.
yeah,
I would imagine that's got to be scary to some degree.
for sure. Well, and my first memory I have of an IEP meeting was we went to my son's back to school conference. So it was me, his mom, him, the kindergarten teacher. I think like you bring your stuff, drop it off 5 minutes in and out.
Hmm.
And after that was my daughter's. So I just had been to this one, go to hers, show up, and there's like 10 people there. And I'm like, what is actually happening? Because I have no idea.
Right.
So I'm expecting a 5 minute in and out, hey, have a great school year. And now we're in this meeting and it's an hour long and we're looking at this stuff, which I don't even know what it is. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
probably
okay,
felt
so yeah,
blindsided.
so team, like, make sure you also explain to the parent, this is, this isn't like an average back to school. This is going to be different. This is what to
Hmm.
expect. So,
And talk
especially,
in regular terms.
yeah,
Don't use all of the, I call it alphabet soup, and then
yeah,
the parents don't understand what you're talking about.
for sure, yeah, for sure. What's one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So something you don't have to pay money for, go to school for, just something practical they can do starting today to be more inclusive.
Oh, I'd say follow social media accounts that are run by people with disabilities. I think so often it's easy for us to um, those of us to work with who work with people with disabilities, we think we
Right.
speak for them, but it's
Yep.
so good to get a firsthand account. If you're interested in particular particular disabilities, then get on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, whatever your preferred platform is, and follow people with autism if that's what you're trying to learn about, or
Right.
people with physical disabilities. But that costs nothing, and that way you get a firsthand account of what life is like with a disability.
That's great. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't discussed?
um just have an open mind, everybody. Just remember, we put limitations on ourselves. That's what I like to say. And just think about that, when you go into your next IEP meeting, or even if your child is playing, soccer, at the recreation department, or whatever. Don't place limitations on others, because they just may surprise you. And I hope they do surprise you.
Absolutely. Ready for the final question?
Sure.
Do you eat spam? Yes or no?
No, 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 Aaron, I do not. Firm no.
Firm no. Yeah, that was very direct. Yeah, I live in
Do
Austin,
you?
Minnesota. I eat it like occasionally. So I live in Austin, Minnesota, where Hormel is, where they make spam. So
Okay.
And the Spam Museum is located. So you talked about earlier off camera coming to Minnesota. So if you come to Minnesota, you can visit the Spam Museum.
Never would have guessed that was in Minnesota.
So
Okay,
yeah,
I love going to Hawaii, and they eat. Hawaii's the number one
yeah,
consumer of spam, and you can even get. They have a spam combo at McDonald's there.
yeah,
So, but I'm not a fan. No.
gotcha. So I mean, we had somebody in town. Well, it was a disability caravan that was going around the country, so they came to town. Actually, stopped at the Spam Museum, so we cooked up, fried up some for him. Since I mean, he came to the Spam Museum and we're in
Uh-huh.
the town, so we had. That's the first time I've had it for a while though, so I eat it, but not like regularly.
It's not a
So
favorite thing. Oh,
no,
that's so interesting. In Minnesota, who would have thought?
yeah,
Okay.
yep. Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
You can follow me on social media at the Peachy Speducator. That's my handle. I'm on Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the main three that I do, and also LinkedIn. I like to read a
Okay.
lot of articles and post things there. So follow me. I'd love to get to know you and connect.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put links to everything in the show notes also. So, well, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Aaron. Hope to see you in person soon.
Yeah. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.